3, 2, 1.
There it goes. And I'm also going to go ahead and Facebook Live it.
Great.
You're welcome.
That's not what I said. Actually, I said great. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you
Hold
for
on.
joining us. Oh,
It's connecting to Facebook. Give it one moment. Oh no, it's Facebook Living on my Facebook. Yeah, why not?
will I start all over again?
Yeah, just give it 1 second. Now we know. It takes a while to set up the Facebook Live. All right, we're live.
Okay. Good evening, all over again. Thank you for joining us tonight on this training session. It's named Conducting a COVID Safe Audit. I'd like to introduce the president for the Miami-Dade County Council of PTA-PTSA, Sandra West, and she's in the pretty much hosting everything. I would like to say on the keyboards, as you were musicians. We also have Maria Norton, our first vice president, joining us. I am George Montes, or Jorge Montes, the treasurer for Miami-Dade County Council. I'd like to start by saying that this presentation that we're going to share with you tonight it's very similar, practically identical to the one that Ginger Flynn presented at the recent convention, the Florida PTA virtual convention. The reason I say that is actually 2 reasons. First, to give credit to Ginger for developing it, but second, just so everybody understands that a lot of this information that we're sharing here tonight, especially how to do the COVID audit, it's very fresh. It's as recent as a week or 2 weeks ago. So it is information that is pretty updated. Before we get started, we got good news and bad news. The good news is that we have information. There's a way to do an audit. There's actually 3 ways. The bad news that it's not the first thing I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover a couple of other things just in case we have some treasurers that are joining us for the first time, or anybody that needs a refreshing course. So having said that, let's get started. The audit actually begins. Let's start with this, just to have an idea. This is probably one of the last steps you do, but just let's start from this. It's the Florida PTA audit compliance. What are the requirements? First, according to the bylaws, the completed audit is due to Florida by August 31st, which means we only have a few days. Once it is completed, you scan it and email the signed and dated copy to Florida PTA. That's the email address, and you will receive an auto reply confirmation. They do get backed up at this time of the year, so you will get a confirmation eventually, but you are going to get an auto reply just acknowledging the fact that they received it. And I got ahead of my next line, which is that they will review it and get back to you. When to conduct the annual audit? It's usually as soon as you have the June 30th statement in the bank. In other words, as of June 30th, you shouldn't have done any more business for the prior fiscal year. What you should have right now, up until the beginning of the school year, is your summer budget, your summer interim budget, which hopefully we plan properly, so you have money to spend during this time. Again, the fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. And per the existing bylaws, the new treasurer, the incoming treasurer, whether it's the same treasurer from the year before or a new treasurer, only takes possession of the books after the audit has been completed. The new treasurer will also have to sign the audit report before taking custody of the books and sending it to Florida PTA. The audit really begins with the audit committee. And the audit committee really begins with the executive board. We should be, by June 30th, we should be doing the audit, but we should have started a couple of months before. We should have started, hopefully at your annual meeting, you, at that point in time, you elected, the executive board at one of their board meetings have elected a committee of 3 members, or in any case, hire a professional. Then the idea will be to present this information at your last annual meeting. If the executive board didn't get a chance to do it beforehand, then this will be definitely the place where you want to choose the nominating committee, the audit committee rather. And then just to have an idea of who can and cannot be in the audit committee. An audit committee is 3 members who have not had access to the PTA funds, the checkbook, a bank account during that fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th of that year. The treasurer, the president, and anybody else as a signature to the account during this period cannot be on the audit committee. Usually you will have a 3rd person. So none of those 3 people can be in the audit committee. Even if the current treasurer will remain as treasurer for the following year, they still cannot be in the auditing committee because they'll be auditing themselves. The treasurer, it's not a member of the audit committee, but they should make themselves available to answer any questions, especially at times like this when we don't get to see each other often. The audit committee has some duties to perform, and I'm gonna try to paraphrase them so I don't have to read everything here. But the first thing is to review, obviously to review the PTA financial records to certify the accuracy of the books. They need to calculate the gross receipts and expenses to report to the IRS. Importantly, they need to reconcile the bank statements to the PTA ledger and the checkbook. And once the audit is completed, they will write recommendations and comments regarding the findings. Hopefully that list won't be very long. That means that they would have done a good job. Now, there is times when we need to do an interim audit. An interim audit takes place if a treasurer resigns sometime throughout the year. You know, mid-year, it could be 2 months into it, 10 months into it. At that point in time, everything stops and we need to do an audit. And a new treasurer, after it's been elected, they should not take possession of the books until the audit is completed. Please remember, do not close any bank accounts if fraud is suspected or PTA funds are missing. Those bank statements might be the only records you have at the end of the day. And again, when an interim audit is called, all PTA business is suspended. Now, I'm going to tell you this, which is not written here, but if at any point in time, anyone on the executive board or any of the members suspect there's something going on that shouldn't be taking place, the first thing to do is contact one of us, I would say. The first thing to do is, if you know who your feeder pattern rep is, contact them. If you know who your region manager is, contact them. If not, you can contact the VP of Regions. If not, you can contact any of us at the executive board, and we'll be very, not happy, but we'll be very sure to pass on that information to the VP of Regions so you can work directly with them. As tempting as it is, please don't pass this information on to other people until you speak to us, because there's matters that are very delicate, especially from a legal standpoint. Especially if you suspect that there's something wrong. Let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, we need to be firm and we need to protect the funds of our members. Okay, so we do get some questions asked regarding the audit. These are the most common ones. And I think I've answered the first one already. Is, can the incoming treasurer serve on the audit committee? Yes. The new treasurer can, as long as he were not the treasurer the year before, or the president or the signature to the account, or had any money, access to the money at all. This is for a PTA, for an interim audit. If our PTA completed an interim audit on January 31st, will the annual year-end audit be conducted for just the remaining 5 months from February, June through June 30th? And the answer is no. The financial page of the annual year-end audit must calculate all the gross receipts for the years and expense, so that complete information can be passed on to the IRS. Otherwise, the IRS needs to look at 2 different documents that won't make sense to them. And what can you do if the treasurer's books and records cannot be located? The audit committee need to summarize the bank statements so they can conduct a very basic financial review, and also complete the bank account summary Excel worksheet available from Florida PTA. We have an example on the following page. Again, we added in, and I know we're repeating ourselves, but it's important that if the treasurer resigns, if there's anything suspected, do not close the bank account until you have all the financial statements. This is an example of what a summary sheet would look like. And we are going to send this presentation to everybody afterwards. So just keep it in mind. You can take notes, but just know that we are going to share this with you, so you don't have to remember every little detail on here. And it's basically a list of all the months, the beginning balance, what took place during the month, and the ending balance, along with some notes along the way, just so you can keep track of everything that happened. And those of you that have done audits will recognize some of this information, and it's very similar to the information we complete on the audit report. This is usually the first page of the audit, and this is what tells you all the documents that the treasurer must turn over to you. Here, very important is to add the copy of the last audit report, which will tell you what happened the year before, and also the taxes from the year before, which will tell you if you're in compliance, not just with Florida PTA, but with the IRS as well. So now, audits in the time of COVID-19. There's, as I mentioned at the very beginning, there are 3 options to conducting the audit. The first one is the in-person meeting, which is the way we've always done it, and I will be using CDC guidelines. The second one is an electronic committee meeting, and the third one is to rotate the books instead of meeting together. Important, I know that you hear it time and time again, we must use COVID-19 guidelines while conducting the audit. Everything we do in life today needs to stick to these rules. PTA audits and PTA business is no different. So if we're doing a in-person meeting using the CDC guidelines, we're going to do the audit as we always do it. But it's important that if we agree to meet in person, we use social distancing, we wear face masks, we keep hands clean and sanitized, we sanitize any items we share. If we're about to pass the books around, spray them, clean them up, and meet outdoors if possible. It's very safe, and it's not so warm anymore, perhaps. So that's the option 1. And I know we made emphasis on the CDC guidelines on here because the process really doesn't change from what we do now. Okay. The second option is the electronic audit committee meeting. And first, we set up a secure virtual committee. We require people to register, so only the people that you have invited and have registered can participate. It should be your audit committee and your treasurer in case it's needed. The treasurer, again, is invited to register and attend. Before the meeting, either the treasurer or the audit committee will complete the financials on page 2 of the audit form and share with the others via email. So there is some work to be done before getting started, because it's required. It's information that we're going to share. We're all not going to be able to sit there around the table and look at it. So the best thing to do is to have it completed and share it with everybody. During the meeting, we're going to share those documents. We're going to review the documents together. We're going to answer the questions on page 1 in sections A and B. And we're going to write audit recommendations and comments as required. And it might be the job of one person. It might be something that everybody chimes in. The audit committee chair is there to compile all that information and to be the person in charge of everything. So everybody should participate, and then at the end of the day, funnel all that information to the audit committee chair, so there's one person doing it. After the meeting, when the report is completed, as you collect all the original documents, rotate the completed form to each member for their signature. Once everything has been signed, you return the completed audit report to the treasurer so we can get the remaining officers' signatures. The remaining officers are current treasurer, new treasurer, and president. And again, once you're finished, you scan and forward the signed copy to Audit Florida PTA, just like we would normally. And then the third option is to rotate the books instead of meeting. And this is something we have done already, so it does work. There's a little bit of driving involved, but you rotate the books, you moving from person to person. So the first thing is the treasurer should be available to answer questions by phone. That means that we should call the treasurer. We can call the treasurer at our discretion and at our leisure. Let's make sure that when we call them, it's at a time when they're available to answer calls. Otherwise, we'll call them in the middle of the night and you'll say, oh, I called you and you didn't answer. Sure, I was sleeping. So let's do it the same way we would do it normally when you're placing a business call to somebody. The treasurer should provide the books to the first auditor, who will review the books and complete all the remaining sections of the audit if the treasurer hasn't done so already, and will write notes and comments. They will pass the audit form to the second and to the third auditors. Each reviews the work from the previous. The treasurer will get everybody else that's left to sign the audit, and as usual, send it to Florida PTA. So in this particular format, it's a little bit of more work because we move the books around, but it also gives each auditor the opportunity to do a thorough study of the audit itself. So all three are very good options. This was an option that has worked for some PTAs very well already. And the passing the books around from one person to another, it gives everybody a little bit of a chance to have their input. Okay. Now we're gonna go a little bit through how we actually do the audit. And again, this might be repetitive to some people, but we might have some treasurers that are joining us for the first time. First step is to complete the header information on both pages. And make sure to include your 8-digit PTA local unit and our county, Miami-Dade, on both pages. The full name of your PTA. I know we love acronyms, but we need to see the name spelled out, because being Miami, there's a lot of, trust me, there's a lot of schools called Pearl Way, and they all have different names after it. So let's make sure that it's a written out name. We need to complete Section A. The auditors will check all the boxes of the financial records provided to them by the treasurer. Then we complete Section B. To guide this review process, all the auditors will answer all the questions listed, either a yes or no. Blank is not an option, so either it's yes or no. We will write recommendations and comments if needed. If any of the financial records are missing in Section A or B, or if the answers are no in Section B. And then Once we're done, we return the books and completed audit. And this, we picked up some examples of what audits should look like. This is what is considered a large PTA, where the gross receipts are more than 50,000 but less than 200,000, and blessed are those that can be in this position, because it means that we're able to help our kids a lot more than other people would. This is just a completed one. I'm sure everybody have seen it before, but just to get an idea of what it would look like, you see the local PTA unit. It's nice if it's typed, but it can be written. If we're gonna write, please print. Let's print, because we might have very pretty handwriting, but not everybody can read it. So when we check a box, let's make sure that it's a clear check, that well, here, I see number 10. If you see it here, they left it blank. That was a mistake. Wait. Okay, yeah, that was a mistake, unless they weren't counting cash. And then you have this is page 2, where you actually have all the financial information. And this usually tells you what level you are in terms of filling out the tax information, which is a topic for another day. And this is what the bottom of the audit should look like. Every little space on there should be filled out. Now I'm going to share some examples of audit findings and comments, and this, we see them often. Hopefully they don't apply to a lot of PTAs, because when you see them, that means that there's some things that we're not doing. Some examples are the bank statements that were not reviewed or reconciled. They weren't even signed as requested. The check was provided, but they really didn't do anything with the checkbook. There was no separate bank statements for Square or PayPal or other deposits. There were no cash verification forms. There were no monthly treasurer's reports. And the treasurer report is important. It should be part of the minutes of every time we have a board meeting, and every time we have a general meeting, especially, we should have a financial report. And that financial report should be a part of the minutes, because it doesn't do us any good for the treasurer to show up and say, we had $10,000, we spent $3,000, we had $7,000, and then that's it. There's nothing else. But it's up to us to remember what the treasurer said at one point in time. And once we have to depend on memory, things can change. So that is an important one to be there. There should be monthly treasurer's report, and they should be a part of our minutes of every board meeting, every general meeting. A copy of the PTA budget was not provided. If we don't have a copy of the budget, we have no idea how, why, and on what we're spending our money. Again, only one set of minutes was provided for a PTA meeting. No, our bylaws say we should be meeting monthly, so we should be following our bylaws. And granted, this has been the perfect opportunity to show that we cannot always do that with what's happening in the last 4 months, but there should be more than one meeting. Okay, and it's not like nowadays we don't have the option of meeting. Also, the PTA did not send a payment to renew PTA insurance, but renewal forms were included with the records. There are certain things, and it's, I think at the very end of the presentation, we take a look at it, that we must do all the time. Getting our insurance, it's an important aspect of it. If we don't have insurance for any events that are taking place, we're liable. So insurance is one of the requirements to stay in compliance, but we'll look at that at the very end of the presentation. Some of the recommendations, and these are very long, so I'm not going to read through all of them, but an example of a good recommendation is to develop standing rules for how we operate. And this happens when we have a lot of events and we have a lot of different people involved and there's a lot of money moving around. We should have a very clear path as to what happens with money, how money moves in and how money moves out, but especially how money moves in. Should be a very clear path of what happens. There should be 2 signatures required on every checks, and that's pardon the pun, checks and balances to make sure that everything that it's not just the president writing checks to themselves to a vendor that they know really well. We should make separate depositors for each budgeted income line item. There shouldn't be a deposit for $500 that says agendas, t-shirts, and candy. Because the auditors, the first thing that they're going to do is look at that. Everything should be, even if it's a $20 deposit, $15 another deposit, $5. I know it could be a little bit of work, but it needs to be done that way. And obviously, we do this most of the time now for all deposits, even the E ones. Keep a copy of the deposit given by the bank. A treasurer's book in today's world should be a mixture of old school and let's call it new school. Old school is because there's a lot of stuff that should be printed, should be put in a book. And new school is we can also, at the very end of the year, hand the next treasurer a flash drive with everything that we gave him printed in a flash drive. But it should be, but we should strive to do both because it's a lot easier for a small receipt to be lost if we don't scan it. There's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to lose things. We only keep them on a file. God forbid the flash drive gets lost. So let's make sure that we document things. I know it's very old school. It's very much the way PTA started, but that's the way we should keep it. This is an example of an audit for a small PTA. Information really is not that different except for here for the amount money that was made. What do we do with a completed audit report? First, we file it. The treasurer files the original audit report with the PTA permanent records. We present it. The treasurer must present the audit report, not just at the executive board meeting, but at the next general membership meeting where it will be adopted by the members. That's when the audit becomes official, when the general membership approves it. Not just when the executive board does it, but when when general membership approves it. Even though you have sent it into Florida PTA and then have it. But as far as for your books, that's when it becomes official, when all your members look at it and say, oh, you guys did a good job. Also make sure that into the minutes of that very same meeting, you include any recommendations, any comments that you have for the audit. And again, to remain in good standing with Florida PTA, forward copy of signed and dated 2-page audit report to audit@floridapta.org. We found every possible way to tell you guys that unless Florida PTA gets the audit, they don't think you did an audit. So you might have done the most wonderful job in the world, and if your audit is sitting in a drawer, it's not going to help you. It's going to put you out of compliance. Oh, so your audit is complete. What do we do with our taxes? And I believe, Madam President, that we're going to have a separate webinar on taxes coming up soon. So, and this is what you normally should be doing. If your 3-year average is equal to less than $50,000, you should be doing the 990N, which is a P postcard. If it's between 50 and 200,000, it's the 990 EZ. And if it's more than 200,000, which will be absolutely great, then you do the 990 form. Here's what I was referring to. These are the compliance requirements for affiliation. This is how we stay in compliance with Florida PTA. We need to submit our returning officer information. That's how we get the kit of materials. Granted, again, this is a difficult time, so I know that not everybody's elections have been completed. But we need to strive to get them done as soon as possible. We need to make sure we pay our membership dues every month. We can do it via member hub. We can do it old school, sending a check. We need to complete the audit. by August 31st. We need to do our taxes. The taxes need to be done to the IRS by November 15th, and by November 30th to PTA. And then the last thing is to make sure your bylaws are active. They need to be renewed every year.
Jorge,
Yes, ma'am.
because you grabbed that from Florida PTA, there's actually 2 more things on the local level.
Oh,
So let's update that slide. The 2 things on the local level. 1, you need to attend training. Guess what? Everybody here has attended training. Yay! And you also
they
need to
look very excited.
You also need to purchase insurance, guys.
Yes.
So the insurance documents normally are mailed to your school address. I'm trying to work with AIM right now so that we can get them to you electronically instead. So that's why we really need to know who the officers are. So please make sure you turn that information in. Jorge, do you want to take a few questions from the chat?
Do we have questions?
Oh, we have questions.
Okay.
All right, let's start with a few of the hot button questions from the chat. What happens if you're not going to have that audit done by August 31st?
I'm going to let you answer that, Madam President, so you can put the fear of God into them.
Well, we're going to send out the PTA police to come find you. Yeah, right. There is no PTA police, people. Just get the audit done as soon as you can. If you don't turn it in by August 31st, you're no longer considered in compliance. And if you have anything that requires you to be in compliance, like needing a 501c3 letter, or your bylaws approved, or an award, then you're going to have a problem. So as soon as you can get that audit turned in, get it turned in. Jorge,
Yes.
What do you do if the treasurer resigns and you haven't had your election yet?
The first thing you need to do is conduct an audit. If you haven't had your election, you mean after the year was completed, or just 3/4 through the year? The first thing to do is to do an interim audit, just to make sure to protect our funds, and then you move on to find a treasurer.
And who elects that treasurer until you have your official membership election?
The executive board.
Okay. What do you do if you have an auditor who is not going to be available to get the audit done for any reason?
Maybe we should have mentioned you should have a backup auditor. But yes, I mean maybe we should mention that before, that we should have a backup person just in case. I know the bylaws for some schools say between 3 and 5, so you could choose 5. I've been involved in audits where it's 5 people. It's very controversial because it's a lot of people, but you should be choosing a backup person, because there's always need to be 3 people.
Okay, the next question that I haven't answered in the chat yet is, what happens if we have more than 4 outstanding checks? There's only 4 lines on the audit form.
Oh, please go ahead and make a note on there that we're attaching a document, and put it in an Excel file or some kind of printed document, and just make a note on there, please see attached document label 1AB. And make sure that document travels everywhere where the audit documents go.
Okay. And here's an interesting question. What's the latest day that a local unit should conduct elections? Well, to be honest with you, I've gone to elections literally all year long. So if you should be following your bylaws, most bylaws say April, May, or June. Obviously, we're all late at this point. So as soon as possible would be my answer.
Yes, and I can tell you from my experience, last couple of years as a Central Region Coordinator, just as Madam President said, we do have elections all throughout the year. There's PTAs that have problems and they want to get restarted. They haven't been restarted at all and want to get, so it could happen at any time. Hopefully it happens as soon as possible at the beginning of the school year. Otherwise, you're not serving the community. You're not serving your general membership. We're as a past executive board, you're diligent in your duty, because our job is to make sure that there's a transition there. There's a group of people that are there to help the kids, to advocate for the kids, and to look over those books or that money that we have in the bank.
All right, if anybody has any other questions, just go ahead and raise your hand, unmute yourself. Oh, Anna Gonzalo just put something in the chat. After we closed the June 30th, a check was credited on the June statement and taken back by the bank in July. So now they have a discrepancy. I would still complete the audit according to the June 30th bank statement, and then be prepared to have an audit note in this year's audit. However, you should budget minus those funds. Are there
Nothing to
any
add to
other
that.
questions?
Thank you. Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Anna?
Yeah, yeah. That was the check that was issued by Chuck E. Cheese.
Got it.
They ended up getting the amount back, and then the bank charged us a fee for them taking the amount back from our account, which is supposedly like from a fundraiser.
Wow.
Wow.
Can I ask you what bank you bank with?
Bank of America.
One of the big ones. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't expect that we would get charged because we did not issue a check. It was given to us, we deposited, and then apparently Chuck E. Cheese, I think, is going on chapter 11 or something. There was no fund in the bank, so they took it out from our account, and we ended up being penalized for the return fee, quote unquote.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's how the larger banks work, and they charge incoming, outgoing, in any way that they can.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no more questions, thank you guys for joining us.
Before we go, no, I like to also say that there's one member of our board that I forgot to introduce, and it's Cynthia, which is our credential chair, and she's there somewhere. So, hello.
Hello.
Okay.
There she is. All right, well, thank you guys for joining us tonight. If you registered, then we will send you out the copy of this PowerPoint. And we also posted it on Facebook Live. So if you have friends and colleagues in PTA, feel free to send them to my Facebook. I will repost it to the council's Facebook as soon as I get off. All right, everyone, have a great night.